The Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs says it will have completed its proposed changes to the Electoral Amendment Bill before the State of the Nation address, which is next week. The committee has received responses from stakeholders, including the Electoral Commission and Parliament's legal services. The Constitutional Court extended the deadline a second time for finalisation of the bill to the end of this month. Joining us is Joel Bregman, Senior Researcher at My Vote Counts. Joel, before we get into some of the current issues, can you just sort of, in short, lay the land in terms of this electoral bill and its lifespan up to now?
Sure. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. So this all comes from a 2020 judgment in the Constitutional Court that found the current Electoral Act to be unconstitutional because it fails to provide for independent candidates to contest at national and provincial elections. So at local government, you already have independent candidates, but currently as an independent, you are limited to that. So the Constitutional Court found the law unconstitutional. It sent it back to Parliament and gave it a 2-year deadline, which was June 2022, to develop a new law and to have it signed, implemented, and the idea was that then this would be ready for the 2024 elections. And what's happened is that as the legislation made its way through Parliament, there were various objections to the proposed changes. There was a ministerial advisory committee that was set up, and there were two main options that were placed on the table. And the one that Parliament went with is essentially, many people have said they're doing the bare minimum to comply with the order, but that they could have done more to actually reform the electoral system towards greater accountability. But at present, our understanding is that, yes, it will be in effect for 2024.
So are you confident that they're going to meet their promised deadline of before SONA next Thursday?
Well, I mean, like you said, they've already had to ask for more than one extension. But the problem is that if Parliament doesn't get things done in time, it's going to place an enormously difficult challenge for the Electoral Commission, who then have to implement a new electoral system before, to have it in time for 2024. And the Electoral Commission has already said that they are already going to be pressed for time because of all the delays. So, they don't really have an option. It just has to be done. It's a really serious issue.
Certainly. And is there any indication that the tarrying so far has been out of any sort of sinister intent or foul play, or is it just that things move slowly when Parliament has to amend and review bills that are found unconstitutional in the Apex Court?
I mean, there's nothing to my knowledge of any sort of nefarious things happening, intentionally slowing the process down. I think it obviously is complex, and there have been multiple, different times people and organizations have made submissions with a whole variety of different recommendations and ideas. If I'm being a bit cynical, perhaps, this law will in some ways take away power from political parties by placing a new sort of actor on the scene. Some might say it might not be in parties' interest to have this law in effect. So, there might be some sort of slowing down and making 2024, sort of just the bare minimum of what needed to be done.
We already know that 2024 is going to be quite a singular election in that the ANC may well go far below an outright majority. How will this change impact the dynamics in the election? What will the changes look like in practice?
Sorry, the changes in terms of?
Of the bill once it's passed.
Oh, so, well, I mean, once it's in effect, it will now open up, a space for independent candidates to contest. Realistically, a lot of sort of analysts have said that in its current form, it's going to still be very difficult for independent candidates to actually win seats and to have any real say in our politics. So unless more is done to provide a sort of a more even playing field, the actual impact might be limited at least in the first few years while the system's in its infancy.
Just a last quick question. I understand that My Vote Counts has also done some work on intra-party politics and how much democracy there may or may not be within how parties function internally. Could you just share one or two highlights from that research, broadly speaking?
Sure. So I think the most topical thing, I looked at it through the lens of the ANC's elective conference in December. Some of it only finished in January. And Just to, very important was the ANC step-aside policy, which is sort of crucial to its internal democracy. But something which is quite troubling is that at conference, Batabile Dlamini, the former minister who had been found guilty of perjury, and it had been made clear that she wouldn't be allowed to stand for the NEC, a resolution was passed that allowed her to stand, and she won a place on the NEC. So this sort of undermines, the intention of something like the step-aside policy. And instead of sticking to principles, this was a politically expedient for the party. Something which is also important was the disclosure of finances for candidates contesting positions internally, which has never happened before in the ANC, as well as in efforts to end the formal use of slate politics. So, our contention is never that there isn't democracy or that the ANC is inherently undemocratic, but there are certainly other things that the party could do to sort of deepen its democracy, transparency, and to work more in for its constituents instead of closing rank and often protecting itself and its interests.
And a telling message as we look toward 2024. Joel Bregman there from My Vote Counts. Thank you for your time.